want to talk about having a self-image or identity. Um, I think I'm emphasizing this because it's the most important thing. It's the most important lesson I think we can learn in life, and it's also the cause of all the problems we have. This need to have a sense of self through identification with roles that we play, things that we do, and feelings that we experience. Roles that we play, things that we do, emotions that we experience, and our thoughts. So when I say thoughts now, I want you to include memories in there, because memories are just thoughts. So if I begin with the assumption that being is knowing, they're indistinguishable, because there can't be any sense of being without self-awareness, which is knowing. So if I look back all the way to my childhood, I see that there was this self-awareness starting at the age 2 or 3, perhaps, maybe 2. And since that time, since I was a baby, I played many different roles. They've come and they've gone throughout my childhood, my school days, young adult, and I've done many things in my life, and we've done many things in our life, and we're all flawed. So we've done many good things, accomplished many good things, and we've failed at other things. But each time we have a sense of, this is me. This is the true me. Because the self, the normative, conditioned self, talking about the normal, conditioned human experience, that is before training. This conditioned self is always looking for things in the world to identify with, to give one a stronger sense of being. This includes all our joys, sorrows, exuberance, depression. These are passing phenomena that we say, this is what I am, this is me now. And we've become so attached to our emotions that we cherish them. So even if we're angry or frustrated, we'll act to perpetuate that anger or frustration, because we feel not that the behavior is justified, but the emotion itself is justified. In other words, these are my emotions, this is me, and I'm justified in expressing them. So we're always looking for identifications, things to identify with that we become attached to, patterns of thought. solutions to difficult problems that we tend to rely on to extricate ourselves as new problems arise. So we tend to stick to patterns because physiologically we're structured that way. The more we do something, the more we think something, the more we feel something, the easier it is to do, and the more we tend to do it. Use those pathways. They're called entrainments of the neural pathways. So it's very hard or almost impossible to live without identifying and being attached to things. Similarly, talk about a role that I play. A great one to look at is father or mother. We don't recognize that we're limiting ourselves to roles through identification and attachment to a role. It could be any role. I'm brave. I'm a man. I'm gay. I'm heterosexual. I'm assertive. I'm introverted. I'm extroverted. I'm smart. I'm stupid. I'm successful. That's another big one. We're all searching for success, right? But we notice that these things never stay the same. They're coming and they're going. And when a situation confronts us that contradicts the identification that we have, the identity that we have, it's deeply disturbing to us. And we'll tend to ignore anything that contradicts our identification or our self-image at the moment. We'll reject it entirely. We'll see the cause of that discomfort as the fault of others. We'll deny it, right? So let's say I am brave, I'm courageous, I'm a man, right? So I encounter a situation that threatens that sense of being brave, and I become frightened, so I have to act out in bravado or acting as if I'm more courageous than I really am. Because the fear of being cowardly is such a contradiction to my self-concept, my self-image at that moment, that's excruciating and terrifying. So we even reject the fear, and we have to become like a wild animal filled with adrenaline to extricate ourselves or survive that situation. If I have no identity I'm trying to protect or reinforce, then I have nothing to defend. If I'm successful, I make a lot of money, and I meet somebody that makes obviously much more money than me and much more successful, I'll feel threatened by that. But if I just am successful and make a lot of money and I don't identify with that, who cares? So we're filled with flaws. We're filled with anger, jealousy, envy, greed, fear, hatred, disgust. Everything has an opposite. So if I say I'm a liberal person or a progressive person, or I'm an artistic bohemian person, I'm forced to view the world in that way. I'm bracketing myself, I'm limiting myself, and then I am forced to judge the world. I'm gay, I'm straight. Ju- Judge the world according to is and isn't, are and are not. Whoever doesn't match my limited model of myself, which is always changing. So these things are never consistent. So they're illusory. But then I tend to start judging the world and dividing the world into categories. And I'm not fully engaging. I'm not living authentically in the world because I'm limiting myself to a role. Not only that, but I'm seeing the world through that filter. Even male, female. If I'm born a male and I have the genitalia of the male and the body of a male, that's enough. Anything further than that to prove that I'm a man is nonsense. It's extra. It's an extra step imposed upon us by the social roles that we're forced to play, that we're conditioned to play. So we go back to the conditioned self. The only reason why I would want to do that extra step, that extra work, to feel like a man, is because I feel there's something lacking, fear, that I might not be manly enough. Right, so I'm limiting myself to a rule. The point of all this, and I could go on and on, I'll give you further examples later, and then we'll get to the solution of it. Well, let's use another example now. Well, I'll get to the solution first. So rather than looking at identifying with all these passing roles, that are based upon belief systems, ideologies, social grouping, social learning. Look at around the world. You always want to be part of a group. Even saying I'm not part of a group is being part of a group because you're in that group of people who disparage others who join groups. Right? That's my identity. I'm independent. I'm a free spirit, and that's it. So when I feel a yearning to belong to something that I like, I have to. That's a contradiction. It's a conflict within myself, and I have to reorganize my desires or deny what I want because I have this role as independent, free spirited. So we could look at every single role. Let's take one more, for instance. Let's say father. So if I have a son or a child, and I'm playing the role of a father all the time, and I'm proud of being a father, there's something special about being the father. There's this illusion that there's something special, that human life is more special than any other life. But really it's not. It's just all life. Every living thing has just as much right to live as I do. It was a gift. It's not. I didn't do anything to deserve this life. It was, here I am. It's just here I am, and it's a gift. There's no other way to look at it. Just like this, this blade of wheatgrass here has just as much right to life. It didn't have to do anything to deserve being here. Neither did I. So to say that I'm special, or my role is special in some way, is an illusion as well. So if we look at the role of the father, we say, oh, there's something special and noble. I feel noble because I'm a father. And look at the self-sacrifice I make. So that's simply bolstering an artificial, limited sense of self for the gratification it brings, for something or someone, another life so dependent upon me emotionally, that I become dependent upon that emotional relationship as well. And all of a sudden I become the protector and the provider, and there's something noble and special about that. But even the birds and the animals do it. If you watch some beautiful documentaries about how parents caregiving, both parents caregive their young very tenderly and with care. All animals do that. There's nothing special about the human species. The only thing special is that we think we're special for fulfilling a biological role. So I become special and noble because I'm a father. And I relate to the world that way. I no longer do the things I used to do because now I'm a father. I'm a father. I'm a father. So I see the world limited through that filter. And as the child grows and needs less and less care, and the desire and the movement, the natural movement of the child is to break away from the parents, to break away, there's a pulling back from the parent because of the role he persists in. So rather than do the job that every other animal in nature does, get the baby out of the nest and flying as soon as possible because it's a matter of survival. Get the baby and nudge the baby to stand up and walk as soon as possible. Gain freedom of movement as soon as possible because that's the biological imperative. There's this sick clinging due to emotional attachment because I'm a father and that's my child. In fact, everything he does is a reflection of me. So there's this sick, overbearing and intrusive relationship that happens with this over-identification with being a father or being a parent. So we create the dependency so that the child doesn't have that natural instinct to explore with freedom and competence. And then as the child grows older, instead of being a friend changing my role, the child doesn't need someone to watch his every move, and that's very little of that required anyway, to be always on top. If we're teaching our children with dignity and teaching them about freedom and responsibility and discipline at the earliest stages, then there's no need to worry and concern ourselves anymore past a certain stage of independence. Once the child is 6 and 7, starts going to school, 6 years old, he should already have everything he needs to navigate in the world. That's about the time. And of course, he's continued to survive. But the point is, I'll never become a friend because to my child because I'm always a father. So let's get to the answer to this. The answer is that instead of identifying with these passing roles we play, we identify with being human. When I identify with being human first, everything else takes care of itself. In other words, every other role I play in life is with virtue. If I'm a human first, and I recognize that if I'm life, we could take it back one step further. I am life itself. If I am life itself and all life strives to continue itself, all life, especially in the natural world, will strive with 100% effort to continue itself. If we recognize this one basic fact about life, and that I am part of life, then we have a great respect for all living things. Because then I am no different from this. If I recognize the fact that the trees and a blade of grass strive 100% to continue themselves, this movement to perpetuate life, and I'm the same way, then I cannot fail to respect. By the same token, if I recognize that I am human and I share all the same joys and tears and emotions that every other human experiences, all the fear, all the hatred, all the disgust, greed, envy, jealousy, joy, sorrow. If I recognize that my experiences and my needs are the same as all humans, then I can identify with all humanity. When I identify with myself as a human, there's no limitations to that. The only reason why it's not as good as identifying myself as life is that humans tend to think that they can act irresponsible with other forms of life, carelessly, with casual disregard, and use other life as a commodity. So life is first, identifying with life is first, instead of all these roles. So identify with life. And then when I enter into the human role, I identify with being a human, not a white human, or black human, or a gay human, or a heterosexual human, or a male human, or a female human, or a successful human, or a failure human, a rich human, or a poor human. I identify as a human, and I know that within, there's nothing that I can feel and experience that hasn't been experienced by all other humanity, and the needs that I have are exactly the same as the needs of all humanity. Then I no longer see distinction. And I can't separate myself according to nation. So once I fully respect and behave as a human, I treat myself with compassion, and I become aware of all the hatred, anger, envy, jealousy, greed within myself, and I recognize, yes, I am those things because I experience those things within myself, and I'm not a good person, I'm not a nice person, I'm not an artist, I'm not a free spirit, bohemian, I'm not a progressive, I'm none of those things. I'm angry, jealous, greedy, lonely, disgusted, hateful, violent, brutal, vicious person. When I recognize those things as true, then I start to look at the cause of all the conflict in the world as starting from me. Then I understand the true nature of self, and I could do something about it. And I could start behaving like a human instead of like an animal, with all those anger, jealousy, envy, lust. And when I say animal, I mean subhuman, not like a violent person, because all those emotions are violence. If I say I'm a pacifist, but I have anger, disgust for other people, greed, jealousy, envy, those are all violence, but yet I live and abhor violence in the world. But I'll live violence within myself. So the trick to becoming human is to look within, to understand the wretchedness and the perversity of the roles I play to get what I want. So once I work through the process of understanding those things, once I understand them, that I am those things, they'll fade away. Once I can observe them through consciousness, honestly, these things fade away. Once I reflect upon my jealousy, my greed, my envy, my hatred, I can no longer sustain them because I shed the light of consciousness on them. So then we go through that and we become human, and we identify with being human. Then we see all other, there's no difference. There's no distinction. And we no longer can treat others with disregard and disrespect, because it's the same as treating ourselves then with disregard and disrespect. If I recognize we're all the same, just like we're all life and all life strives to live, all humans desire to be happy, and I identify with being human, then I can't cause unhappiness in the world and be greedy and hateful and violent. So the point of all this is for us to stop identifying with I am this, I am that world, because they're all artificial distinctions, temporary passing phenomena that are illusory and self-destructive and limiting. And identify first as being life. And if it's too difficult to identify with this life, at least identify with being human. But you'll have to do the work first. You'll have to rid yourself of the violence, of your violence and your brutality. Let that go. Let it all go. And you'll see that you don't have to be anything but aware.